Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to our next session called The Job Guarantee and Unions in the United States. Today is day 2 of the Global Forum for Democratizing Work, and the day is dedicated to the second pillar of our manifesto, which is decommodifying. How do we decommodify labor in the following sense? How do we make sure that paid work is offered on the right terms, that is offered at decent living, family sustaining wages to all, that is offered in areas that address human need, social concerns, environmental challenges. Decommodify in the sense that we realize and recognize that the private sector has a role to play, but it does not fill the gaps in our social and economic needs, and we do need the public sector to lead the way. In our keynote today and our plenary, we also discussed the role of a concrete proposal, the job guarantee, in meeting these challenges. But today, we really want to also interrogate the connection between decent guaranteed employment in public sector, but also through union work and union organizing. So thank you very much for joining us. I am absolutely delighted to welcome the panelists today, and I will introduce them, I hope briefly. Representative Bonnie Watson-Coleman, welcome to the panel. She has served as a representative in New Jersey 12th Congressional District since 2015 and is the first African-American woman to represent the state of New Jersey. Her work really centers on issues of civil rights and economic security, centered on the belief that no person, no child should fall below a decent standard of living. And she has co-sponsored, authored, and co-sponsored many legislative acts. I just want to highlight the WPA Act, the Workforce Promotion and Access Act, a bill that authorizes the U.S. Department of Labor to create a job guarantee program through grants to states, localities, and tribal entities where unemployment is greater than 10% or double the national unemployment rate. Our second speaker is America's flight attendant, Sara Nelson. She has served as international president of the Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, AFL-CIO since 2014, representing 50,000 aviators, first responders, 17 airlines. She really has been the leader on the forefront of legislative efforts during the pandemic, where she designed the successful payroll program, support program, was historic, a workers' relief program that kept aviation workers connected to their paychecks, healthcare, and other benefits, while banning stock buybacks and dividends across the industry. So yes, she is America's most powerful flight attendant and one of the most powerful labor leaders in the country. Thank you, Sara, for joining us. Last but not least, Liz Medina is here with us, and she's executive director at Vermont State Labor Council, again, AFL-CIO. She's a labor activist, political educator, interdisciplinary artist. She brings together images, stories, and social theory to show the lives of the imagined systems that we can make and construct in our own lives. And she takes inspiration from the oral history projects of the New Deal, and she has done some herself. So I very much welcome you to our panel. Our last panelist, Damon A. Silvers, is the Director of Policy and he's Special Counsel to the AFL-CIO, which he joined as Associate General Counsel in 1997. Another very important voice in the labor movement, unfortunately detained due to family reasons. He will be joining us via a pre-recorded message. So welcome to our conversation. I'd like to open it to Representative Watson-Coleman, as you have been at the forefront of pursuing policies aimed to secure access to food, decent work for all who want it. As a policymaker who's in the thick of all the debates that are happening today on the Hill, how do you view the right to employment, to a decent job, to a job guarantee? How does that fit in the broader efforts to ensure an inclusive American dream.
Okay, I did unmute myself. Hey, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for putting me on this panel with such distinguished panelists. Hey, Sara, it's good to see you. And thanks for having this discussion. My purpose for being in Congress, one of my main purposes, is to make sure that there's a level playing ground, that everyone has access to opportunity and jobs and education and a healthy life in America. And so the Guaranteed Jobs Act is just a piece of that. I believe that the jobs that we should be building, creating, and expanding in this country should be include a livable wage, should include benefits, proper leave, pensions, retirement, healthcare, all of those things. And I believe that government has a significant role in that regard. I also think that government has a significant role in ensuring that in the private sector, jobs are created in such a way as to provide good paying jobs, the benefits, the ability to unionize. I mean, I think the PRO Act is a great illustration of how the public interacts with the private in order to make things happen better on behalf of workers. So for me, the elimination of poverty is fundamental to just about everything that I try to take on, to make sure that there is this floor beneath which nobody, not a child nor an adult, an elderly or a worker, ever falls below. And so the Guaranteed Jobs Program provides jobs in very necessary venues that are underserved right now, both in the communities and by the people who are underemployed. And it guarantees that, it will guarantee that what you are paid is minimally $15 an hour, and you'll have the paid sick leave and the family leave and the things that you need, and the benefits moving forward, as well as access to healthcare. And that's a piece of it. I also have a bill that says if you're a private corporation and you choose to give your bigwigs bonuses, and you choose to benefit from sort of the tax advantages of doing that, then you got to open up some profit sharing to employees, because that's another way of elevating the value of the work that is being done by those who work the hardest to make anything really, really work. And so those kinds of things together provide people with the opportunity to participate in a healthy life, a healthy government, a healthy society. They work together. If people have decent paying jobs, they can purchase things which generates a better economy. They can support families and not deal with the emotional or physical instability of not having enough money to shelter, not having enough money to feed, or anything else. And it provides for safer environments, because when people are fully engaged in work and in productive pursuits, then I think we have even a safer society. And so, and I think that that's a fundamental right of being an American in this country. And so for me, you are guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And this is one aspect of it.
No, thank you for framing our conversation. The aspiration is to create good jobs in any corner of our economy, and of course to provide the kind of support for those who allow us to have our jobs, the unpaid workers as well. But on the question of the job guarantee specifically, I think it's fair to say that historically there has been somewhat of a complicated relationship between job guarantee advocates and union leaders. I would say during the New Deal, more specifically. And yet today that seems to have changed. There is a service union after service union and other labor leaders who are standing behind the proposal, who are have, endorsed it, embraced it. And Sara, you have been kind of one of those relentless champions of the job guarantee. So I want to ask you if you would address that question, and how do you specifically see it, its role in your own work?
Well, thank you. And let me just first say thank you for holding this forum. And also, I want to echo everything that Representative Watson-Coleman has already said. But let's recognize that this isn't just an academic discussion. It's not just a policy discussion. It's a real world discussion. And recent events show us exactly why we need a jobs guarantee. That the idea that is old as the economic freedoms that were promoted by FDR. So we just went through this crisis where our union, as you said, was very successful in getting the payroll support program to keep aviation workers in their jobs. What happened with that was also continuing to connect us to our healthcare, continuing to pay taxes, continuing to pay into our retirement programs. All of that was connected. But we had to come up with a solution that still gave money, government money, to these private entities in order to use the systems that were in place today and have a very simple solution to keep people employed and to keep those paychecks going. If we think about how our economy is built on the idea that it is a flourishing economy with the idea that 5% of the workforce is out of work at any given time, I can tell you from personal recent experience, and also as a union leader who has been doing this work since after the crisis that followed on work, is a psychological harm to that worker, to the family, to the community. And there brings additional problems with that. So we know that when there are mass furloughs, we know that we're going to have a huge increase in the number of calls to our employee assistance line, our union's employee assistance line, because why? There are ancillary problems with that. The problems of financial difficulties at home, the strain that puts on families and marriages, the attempts to try to get out of pain, and the turn, in some cases, to drugs to help to dampen that pain. There is so much that is connected to that employment and the freedom to live that we don't often talk about. And the idea that we would even support an economy that is based on this thought that it makes sense to have people out of work, 5%. It's not the same 5% all the time. So how many people in our society are we saying it's okay to go through this incredibly demoralizing event of wanting to work and not being able to? We have a perspective as the flight attendant union, having been born in the idea that we needed to beat back discriminatory practices that would say that we had to quit when we got married or pregnant or aged out at age 30 or weighed more than 115 pounds, whatever those discriminatory practices were. Let's recognize that when we set a floor, when we raise the floor for everyone, that is how we raise the roof. And unions have much better standing when the federal government says this is a right to a job. And it's not just a job. Let's talk about all of the conversations around the kind of quality or not quality jobs that we have in the country right now, and the reason that people are not willing to continue to go to work in those conditions. So it's really important to set that floor with a jobs guarantee, because unions then can organize without the threat of people being fired, right? We can organize and talk about the fact that there is a baseline, there is a minimum baseline that we can expect, but by organizing, we can actually get a greater share of the wealth that we're creating. So those are fundamental realities and pillars here about why labor would support a jobs guarantee. It takes all of these things off the table that today we have to fight for: a safe workplace, a minimum level of pay for the work that you're doing, the benefits that are tied to that work, and the basic standard that companies have no role in workers deciding who their representatives are or what kind of democracy they're going to have at work. So those are all fundamental things that would make the labor movement so much stronger, make our democracy stronger, make sure that we are not spending money on all these problems that are created by not providing jobs. And as I said, from our union, the other thing that a jobs guarantee does is ensure that we are stripping out discrimination from employment, because people cannot be discriminated against in a jobs guarantee environment. You're simply encouraged to get the people who are most qualified for the job, and everyone who wants to work has the ability to work. If we had had this in place, I'll give you one other anecdote. When we had all of the people just getting paychecks, but there wasn't enough work to go around for the aviation workers who were protected by that payroll support program, the government came to us and said, would flight attendants be willing to go into nursing homes and work and help, where because of this crisis, we need more help right now. If you had a jobs guarantee and you had a minimum standard for what those jobs look like, that would be very easy to accomplish. What we did in those discussions with these private nursing homes is we got to a place where we had thousands of flight attendants raising their hands to say that they would be willing to do this work. But we couldn't actually authorize the program because so much had been extracted from those nursing homes, with hedge funds owning these nursing homes and lowering the standards of the work in this place, that they couldn't even guarantee that they would be able to give us protective equipment to do the work. They also couldn't guarantee that they would manage the liabilities for the workers who were going in to do this work. So fundamentally, when we face crisis, having a jobs guarantee allows us to pivot to do the work that needs to be done in crisis, keep people employed, and it's essentially an automatic stabilizer for the economy in a way that supports, as Representative Watson-Coleman said, a free society with the promise that this Constitution provided, the pursuit of happiness. And so that's why we support a jobs guarantee. But again, I want to be really clear, it's not just an academic or a policy discussion. We have real life experience about how this would have bettered the lives of the people that we represent and helped our communities and made a better use of tax dollars.
Thank you, Sara. So many points I would like to explore in the Q&A, but I really appreciate you driving the point across that there is very real material evidence that even in the midst of a pandemic, where we had to, in a sense, scale down, shut down so much activity, even then and there's acute need for work that is not done, and there are people willing to do it. And so a job guarantee would be an important employment safety net even in that case. And I absolutely love the line that I have borrowed from you, that you can't raise the roof unless you have secured the floor. So I'm just going to switch a little bit the format and play the video of Damon Silvers, who is actually adding a different perspective on union work versus guaranteed employment. So let's give him the virtual floor and share his message to us.
Good afternoon. I'm Damon Silvers, and I'm the Senior Strategic Advisor and Special Counsel to the President of the AFL-CIO. I apologize for not being with you live, but I
All right. That was, I think, a really important intervention to drive the point across how much our fates are intertwined. The fates of those working, the fates of those who are not working, those who are working under difficult conditions in the private sector, those who have some job security in the public sector, and how our common mission is indeed to secure decent, dignified employment opportunity for all as the standard for what we believe is a dignified employment. Liz, you have done a lot of work at the local level, a lot of organizing at the local level with unions. How do you see this connection between the job guarantee and the broader picture, but also very much at the local, how local work would change?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be part of this panel and raising the roof with you all. So the job guarantee addresses a really important issue, right? So as an organizer, the issues with the most potential are the ones that are widely and deeply felt. And the job guarantee addresses unemployment, which is an issue that is meeting both of those criterion, and however, shows up in different ways depending on which group of workers you're talking to. So most recently, we had a wonderful convention this past September and welcomed a new board member who ran on our United slate. Her name is Brittany Rhodes. She works in the field of mental health, and she experiences the pain of unemployment indirectly. And I think she put it really well when she said in her candidate statement that the platform that we support, the 10-point program as a labor council, which includes pretty much everything that would be part of a job guarantee, right? A living wage, access to healthcare, pensions. Those programs are essential to suicide prevention. It's the #1 thing for her and her clients, having that job security, having the means to work and live with dignity. And we need to address this crisis head on, and a job guarantee would do that. And it definitely has activated our mental health workers as a labor council. We also, as a labor council here in Vermont, care deeply about social justice issues and have been trying to develop relationships with allied organizations. And we believe as a labor movement, we all need to do this. And one of those relationships are with the Black Perspective, which is a racial justice group here in Vermont. And at the start of the relationship, they were really seeking ways to get access to good paying union jobs because their members disproportionately have a real hard time due to discrimination and racism and getting good paying union jobs. And so we've been really working hard for them in trying to get affirmative action for Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC communities through project labor agreements, PLAs, but we need to, of course, do much more, as nationwide, we all know, unfortunately, Black workers are twice as likely to be unemployed as white workers. And sadly, obviously, this is nothing new. And one of my favorite labor leaders in the past has really married the concept of civil rights with economic rights and why we need both of them to actually address these inequalities and this injustice. And that would be A. Philip Randolph. And if I could, I'd love to read a quick quote from his March in Washington speech in 1963. So it goes, "We know that we have no future in a society in which 6 million Black and white people are unemployed and millions more live in poverty. Nor is the goal of our civil rights revolution merely the passage of civil rights legislation. Yes, we want all public accommodations open to all citizens, but those accommodations will mean little to those who cannot afford to use them. Yes, we want a Fair Employment Practice Act, but what good will it do if profit-geared automation destroys the jobs of millions of workers, Black and white?" And so I think that really goes to the heart of the matter, that we not only need to end discrimination, we also need to ensure there are jobs and opportunities for everybody that are real, that you can have a right to, not just, in theory. And this is structurally a built-in problem in our economic system. There's a reason why we just accept at least in the mainstream media, unemployment as a given. We think we have a healthy economy if there's 5% or less people unemployed. And the truth is, we don't need to have anyone unemployed. And the fact that there are unemployed people is not only disproportionately hurting those who are unemployed and the families and communities who are facing all that, but also it serves to direct that pain to a limited group of workers so you can contain the downturns of economic fallouts, right? And also suppress all wages and control all wages for all workers. This concept is, very well articulated in the concept of the reserve army of labor. And I encourage everybody to listen to a really excellent podcast episode by This Is Revolution podcast featuring Pascal Robert and Jason Miles on Black Americans as a reserve army of labor. And they go into that history, how that works in our economy, and what we can do to change it. And I think a job guarantee is one of the transformational policies that would go a long way to erasing this structured inequality and injustice in our economy. And, I don't need to repeat it necessarily. Sara articulated it so well, but, job guarantee is huge. It would really also help us get rid of the fear that is so pervasive and limits our rights, our fundamental rights to organize and to strike or take direct action in our workplace as well. I hear from members all the time who are up against a wall with their employers. The wages keep going down, their healthcare just keeps getting worse. They haven't felt, however, empowered to strike in sometimes decades because there is such a pervasive fear, even in this low employment state, of losing that job. And if we had a job guarantee, we would actually be able to stand up for ourselves and our coworkers. We would actually be able to meaningfully exercise our rights. And that is super important and something I see throughout our membership. And we just need to connect those dots.
Thank you, Liz, for that very much. Some themes resonated with me from your comments, and it's the main theme is about disempowering narratives, like how we just take certain concepts for granted and how they're weaponized against labor, such as you said, the natural rate of unemployment, that somehow if we just concede that we cannot have jobs for all and that is just such a normal thing to have, then that is disempowering, that we are then really having to compete for scraps, and there are far too many of us, right? That tech change is disempowering, right? That we have the fear of technological change and we are powerless in the face of it. So I just want to turn to the representative to ask you how do we at the policy level, what are some concrete opportunities where we might see the pendulum swing, where we might see possibilities to change the narrative, where we might make steps where jobs are not just always attached to legislation and they are kind of an implied promise, right? Because everything is done in the names of jobs, that they're not implied, and they're not just an empty slogan, but that we actually have concrete opportunities to then link our legislation with this demand that we need good jobs for all. How do you see the political landscape today?
Well, if you look at it right now, you see three things. You see the fact that there's supposedly a lot of job openings, but not workers. So you got to question, well, why is that? Why do we have all these vacancies and this desire for people to come work and people are not? And so I suspect it says a lot about the quality of the jobs and the rate of compensation, et cetera. Secondly, we're talking right now. So in that environment, it's a very healthy time to talk about the things that we're interested in, which are good and decent jobs all over the place. So how do we make that happen? How do we make that more than a slogan, but a really good idea? So as you know, we are having these discussions on the Hill right now when it comes to the president's full Build Back Better agenda, which includes two very important aspects of employment, growing employment, growing the economy, and growing the opportunities for everybody to participate. So on the one hand, we have the traditional bricks and mortar infrastructure program that we know provides jobs for white men, basically, because they build a road, a bridge, or something hard. They climb an iron wall or whatever, but it's typically a male job, and it's typically a white male's job. Because with me just coming up and down 95 every other week from DC, with construction on 95 every 4 or 5 miles, I pay attention to the fact that I don't see anything but white men working on those projects. And so the combination of the bricks and mortar and the hopefulness of the Build Back Better, which is more inclusive, which is freeing up women and other minorities from other encumbrances so that they can work, whether or not it's providing childcare and tax credits and elderly care and expanded health care and all those things, as well as building more climate resilient projects, looking at investments in alternative jobs and things of that nature, creates a bigger workforce. But out of both of those bills together, going to be an incredible transformative opportunity to employ everyone who's ready, willing, and able. And the good thing about what we're doing right now, or what we hope to accomplish right now, versus even what happened in FDR's time, this is a Build Back Better program for everybody. Minority, you're not going to find signs down south that say whites only. You're not going to find signs in some other place, women don't apply, or whoever, because at the time that you're going to have this consideration, these two bills coming together, you've got the most diverse legislative branch in the federal government that you've ever had in history. You've got a president who avows a commitment to this equalization of opportunity and is going around the country fighting for it and standing with those of us who are standing tall and strong to make sure that Build Back Better, that human infrastructure, goes hand in hand with that bricks and mortar infrastructure. If we can make that happen, and there's no reason that we shouldn't, we are going to provide full employment opportunities and diverse employment opportunities and training opportunities for people to get trained in jobs that they were formerly left out of, as well as, some traditional education advancement, all of which is great. But the hopefulness of looking at this holistically and recognizing that if we stand together and hold fast, we can improve the lot of everyone who's ready, willing, and able to work. And that we will value work, including work in the care economy. We will place a value to it that those who are going to be working in that economy get a decent pay, decent benefits, decent leave, and pensions, those kinds of things. To me, I'm so excited about being there right now because I see the opportunity of a change that will just propel us to a healthy democracy that we say we are, that we thought we were aspiring to, that there was a gap in it for a minute, but we can be back on track. And so that's what it means to me. It means full employment. It means good, decent jobs. And it means equity of opportunity and protection of those minorities and women who've been left behind for one reason or another. And at the same time, and I'm going to shut up after I say this, at the same time, it protects the youngest among us with both decent child care and preschool and child tax credits, which takes children out of poverty, and it takes care of our elderly and their needs in terms of expanding access to health care. So it's a win-win for our society. And it is something that we all need to embrace and fight for and raise our voices and raise the roof and raise hell and everything else to make it happen.
Yeah, thank you so much for that perspective. And I want to connect it to Liz's comment about how important the demand for job guarantee was to the civil rights movement, as you highlighted, and the recognition that unless we have this fundamental right guarantee, they will always be unemployment will always be used as a tool of racial subjugation, discrimination, and so Liz, I wanted you to give you an opportunity to elaborate a little bit on that. That we have this this economic system where the question is, well, who gets those jobs when we accept the paradigm of joblessness, but also in the best of times, right? We do recognize that there are people seeking decent work, even when the appearance is that employers are seeking employees. There's still a shortage of good jobs, and so the question is, who actually even gets the foot in the door? And then the next question is, well, what kind of job do they get? If you wanted to elaborate a little bit on this nexus between just discrimination, economic opportunity, and path to participation.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. And it's a huge problem, and it's been a problem since the very beginning in this country. So, of course, who are the first to be fired and the last to be hired? It's always been the Black community, Indigenous, people of color, people who are non-white, and also women, frankly. They came in when they were needed during World War II heightened production, and then they were kind of ordered to go back and work in the household, and that was a huge issue too. And this is a very clear, long-standing strategy by the employer class and their representatives in Congress. All too often, they have too many, to divide and conquer working people in this country. They know that if they can just buy off a large enough segment, they can contain the pain of the fact that there aren't enough jobs for everybody, that the jobs, there's a variation in jobs. Some jobs are really bad and pay really low wages and are really dangerous. And who are relegated to those bad jobs too? If a person can even, a color can get, or a Black person get a job, it's often the worst job. And that's unfortunately constantly the case, and something we always have to fight against and always have to take affirmative action wherever possible. But the whole point of it is to absolutely make sure that, there's a certain privileged white working class that get the best jobs and have the most security, so they don't get together with, the BIPOC community and raise hell together about the injustices of our economic system of capitalism that we live under, of racialized capitalism, essentially, to put on my academic hat, and I don't like to do that too often, but it is, the wages of whiteness are, so to speak, or that benefit, that privilege is starting to erode slowly but surely. We are seeing the deaths of despair among the white middle class increasing, but it is still the case that if you are white, and if you come from a better economic background too, you have access, as well as a working class person, myself, it was really challenging to navigate college. I was first generation to go to college. I really didn't know, what to do, and it was a struggle. I always felt kind of like an outsider, and I'm really glad to have had that opportunity. But it certainly meant that I had certain opportunities that were closed to me as well, and even more if I hadn't even gone to college in the first place, obviously. So the more privilege you have in terms of your socioeconomic position, the better jobs you get. And that's just not right. It's not about merit.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. And Sara, you're back. There are some questions in the Q&A I was hoping you can help us with. You spent so much time on the Hill. And so from your vantage point, what do you think are the barriers? What are the biggest challenges, biggest myths, counter arguments that you have come across in your conversations about the job guarantee?
Well, I think fundamentally people go to this idea, they confuse UBI with jobs guarantee. And they try to make it sound like workers are lazy if we have to give them a jobs guarantee. You know, this whole idea that has been spread to try to keep working class people from coming together to demand more for our labor has been, if you don't like this job, go find another one, go somewhere else. You're lazy, it's on you. There's also been incredible poverty shaming, so that people should feel ashamed if they can't pay their bill, if they can't afford to have a house to live in, if they can't afford to send their children to school. And this has also kept people very busy. So people have had to work 2 and 3 jobs just to get by. What we find in our union and in working with people in the communities is that the people who have to work those 2 and 3 jobs are, first of all, not hearing leaders talk about their issues. So they don't think that elections have anything to do with them. And if they did think that elections had anything to do with them, the opportunity to vote, to get off work, to actually participate in democracy has so many more barriers to it. So it's a combination of the two. If you raise the standards and have everyone understand that it is shameful on our government, it is shameful to compete over even the worst jobs, that if we can see that narrative into our representatives, into our political discourse, and actually have people who are living in poverty, which is essentially half of our nation right now, understand that this is about them, and if they participate in the democracy, they can change it. So the biggest barrier in Washington is that we do not have representatives who believe that they are there to represent those people in their district or their states, because they are not donors and because they are typically not voters. So it is a perpetual issue. And then polls are created off of the old script, off of the unemployment script, off of the corporate script. And so you don't ever have an injection of a real dialogue around what could be created by making sure that everyone can work. I think about the Civilian Climate Corps that could be central to the Build Back Better agenda. And without enough investment in that, we're not going to have this promise for young people, both in terms of how we're looking out for our earth, that they're going to live on longer than the rest of us, right, as it stands now, but also in terms of the promise for how they can contribute to their communities and their planet. I mean, what better use of funds? And yet there are some representatives who are saying that we're just throwing money away. We're throwing money away on people, good jobs, and an attempt by all of us to attack the major existential threat of our lifetime. So we have to change the dialogue. And by doing that, what we have to understand is we have to raise standards. We have to raise expectations for the working class. We did some of that with the American Rescue Plan because people saw for the first time, oh my God, I don't have to struggle. Oh my God, it doesn't have to be this way. Oh my God, I shouldn't have to spend 80% of my check to have someone else take care of my children and spend more time away at work in order to make that work. None of that is necessary. And so raising those expectations and giving people results and better ability to participate in democracy because we're giving them a leg up is going to build back better. And let me just go on record and say that as a union leader, I would never take to the membership a half negotiated contract. And that's what was about to happen last week if the House had only voted on the infrastructure bill. And we would never do that because the entire membership has to be represented in that contract and gets a chance to vote on it. And unless we put both bills out there representing the broad range of society, we are not doing what we are charged to do, I would say, as union leaders or representatives in Congress. So those are my thoughts around that, Pav.
No, that's fantastic. Never take a half negotiated contract back. And the Progressive Caucus, played a pivotal role here last week. And so Representative, as a vice chair at large of the Progressive Caucus, I want to ask you the same question. There are so many bills in the world. I mean, we have bigger fish to fry at this moment, right? We have to pass the agenda, but within the agenda, there are many bills, there are resolutions that kind of aspire to bring the job guarantee to the forefront, from your own legislation to the job guarantee resolution of Representative Ayanna Pressley, to the Thrive Act, the Green New Deal resolution, and the Green New Deal for cities, and on and on. There is legislation out there. From your vantage point, I mean, what is, are these meaningfully in the pipeline where we might be able to see them should the Build Back Better pass? And then what are, from your point of view, the biggest myth and the biggest obstacles to proceeding with this work?
So the biggest myths and the biggest obstacles are those who are in Congress who believe that these are not worthy pursuits because the people that would benefit from it don't deserve it because they're responsible for their own lot. And that has to do with the disconnection that exists between those who are elected and their responsibility to those who have elected them. I can't speak to the specificity of each of the bills. I can speak to this. The Build Back Better agenda and the bricks and mortar infrastructure agenda both will provide jobs and opportunities. The responsibility to ensure that the benefits of both of those bills accrues to all people and that they are not marginalized or halfway employed or underemployed because of their race, creed, color, or gender, or whether they're LGBTQ or whatever. That's the responsibility of government. And it is the responsibility of Congress to make sure that there is oversight of government to ensure that government is requiring those people who will benefit from these programs that are doing what they have to do to hire everybody who's ready, willing, and able to work. When I was in, every time I meet with a secretary from this administration, whether it's in Homeland Security or it's on one of the various subcommittees that I'm on in appropriations, I mean, it's been with Buttigieg, it's been with the Sara, it's been with the Education Secretary. My thing is this, it's your job to make sure that our intention for everyone to be engaged and have opportunities actually happens in real time, and that you're not reporting out to us what didn't happen and try to correct it after the fact, which is what seems to happen typically when we have these programs and these opportunities. So, I mean, I put people on notice. I don't want to hear about it after the fact. I want to know in real time, what are you doing to ensure the contractors that are building 5 miles of Route 95 have a representation of women and minorities? What are you doing when this entity benefits from these programs, that there's representation of the workforce that actually exists, that shows up and is employed and is treated equally in both compensation and benefits. And so that is a heightened responsibility. It's not a different responsibility for government, but 4 years ago, in the last 4 years, we didn't have any interest in that. And now I think that we have a president and an administration who has a commitment to it. We just got to make sure that it is a full commitment. And that's like going to be our job in Congress. Something is happening to my, I hope I still have you.
Yeah,
I'm still there. Technology is amazing and intimidating and ill working all at the same time. But at the end of the day, like Sara, we want the, I've lost you.
Yeah.
At Sara, we want full representation. We want the standards raised. With Liz, we want everyone to have an opportunity to do these things. And I'm in full accord with that. So I see our responsibility as some real serious real-time oversight.
Thank you for this, and I want to go to the Q&A on that. Well, there are two questions. One by Andy Kennedy. Sara, with the vilification of unions, right? I mean, I hope that's turning, you know, with the current administration. But you know, unions are somehow always pitted against, you know, other non-union jobs. How do we strengthen them to ensure that corporations don't take this position? If you want more pay, we could just treat you badly. If you don't like it, you just go back to the job guarantee. How do we prevent this kind of bargaining?
Well, I listen, again, it goes back to setting that baseline standard. And then unions have the ability to raise the roof. When people are just struggling to get by, they're not participating in democracy, they're not having a say, and they're not raising expectations that they can have more. One of the things that was really critical in what we did with the relief was not only to say that it was workers first and that all the government funds would go to funding the frontline workers, but it was also very important to make sure that we were putting caps on executive compensation and a ban on stock buybacks and dividends. Because the pull from Wall Street, you can say to executives that you should promote diversity and inclusion in your workplace. You should show your customers by your employment that you welcome them at your door, right? You can say all of that, but they have the financiers and Wall Street telling them you are only supposed to maximize your profits, and not for the business, not for the workers, not for the consumers, but for us. And so it was really important for us to put those constraints on the executives and on Wall Street to make sure that this crisis would not move to a place of austerity. So that's why I say these constraints and what Representative Watson-Coleman was talking about, that oversight by Congress and that requirement of there are certain standards for the workplace for the people. Okay, we're not just going to have an economy that is measured on how much someone in Wall Street is taking home, how much a stock price is, because it has no relation to how that is actually providing good jobs, how that is actually helping our communities. And in fact, it moves to a place of maximizing profits so that there is a buying of our democracy and then an attempt to actually evade any contributions to that country with jobs or with taxes by offshoring and having incentives to offshore. That's where we go to if we don't have standards set. And from there, then people feel empowered to be able to speak up in their workplace, participate in their workplace, offer solutions in their workplace. United Airlines could never have put in place a vaccine mandate if it didn't have unions on the property to negotiate with them, to help provide good information to the workers, to actually work a process that wasn't going to place a burden on the workers to do that. And because of that now, United Airlines is over 99% vaccinated. That is only because the workers take part in their workplace.
Fantastic. And I will take
that
one.
We can't fight for better.
Oh. Yes, thank you. There was a little delay. I didn't mean to step on you. Our hour was very short, but I will take one extra minute because there is one important question. And the question from Christina is, how can constituents proactively best secure that the people's interests are represented in the oversight process? Anyone who wants to chime in, please give us your final thoughts on what can we do as citizens.
Bother the policymakers. Inundate them with your calls, your texts, your emails. Speak to people and get them to do the same.
Yes.
Organize demonstrations and efforts. Our voices have to be raised, and particularly the members of Congress who maintain the status quo for the 1% need to understand that the 99% has had enough of it. And the only way that happens is that
That's right.
we get engaged.
Liz,
Do
yes.
not give up on the
Oh.
South. Do not give up on the red states. Do not give up on the red districts. We organized, we sent 25 flight attendants to a Republican senator who refused to sign on to our bill. And the very next day he asked, how fast can I get on a letter? 25 flight attendants protesting outside his office at home. So don't give up. We're abandoning the workers. We're abandoning the people in those places when we think that we can't move people with that action that the representative is talking about.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add another way to get involved is to run for local and state offices too. And if you want to go even further, good for you. But, too often the local level of government is overlooked. And if we win something like a job guarantee, it may be very much likely that there will be a great deal of local control in how that program is rolled out. And we have been able to do a lot here in Vermont by having a progressive majority in our Queen City Council, Burlington City Council. And speaking of holding bad employers accountable, who would say maybe just go back to your job guaranteed job, we actually managed to get an abusive employer, the Burlington Airport director, Gene Richards, fired, who was harassing, threatening to beat up workers. We got him fired because we had a majority of power in that local city council in Burlington. And so that means a lot. Take power for yourselves, run for those offices, and connect with your labor unions and local organizations to help you do it.
On that very hopeful note, thank you so very much. I'm so grateful for your time. Best of luck in your work. And to those of you who have joined, thank you. The conversation continues. Please join us in the next sessions. And thank you once again.